Things are better. The world is better.
Just because there's not a war doesn't mean there's peace.
Eric, don't join them.
Whatever it is you think you saw in me, I buried it with my family.
Together, we will cleanse the earth.
Everything they've built will fall! And from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one!
I've never felt power like this before.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 9 of Discussing Who, the podcast where you never know who or what we will be discussing next. Again, this is episode 9, and tonight we're discussing, amongst other things, X-Men Apocalypse. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, Clarence Brown. Hey, Clarence.
Hey, Cal. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Can't complain. Back for another discussion. Excited to talk about this movie that I pretty well enjoyed. We'll see what your opinion is a little bit later.
I have to admit, I enjoyed it. I'm going to hold, like you said, look, we'll hold that for a few more minutes. Lee is not with us tonight. He is doing something else with his church, and I'll mention that in just a minute. So before we get started, we want to talk about something that's been going on in the United States this week, and specifically in Florida. We, as the three co-hosts, decided that we wanted to just touch on it. What I think I'm going to say is something very brief about Orlando, and what it's going to be is this. When you all boil it down, we are all human beings, whether you are Democrat, whether you're Republican, whether you're Christian, whether you're Muslim, whatever your sexual orientation may be, whatever you, how old you are, or for whoever you are, when it all boils down, for us, as for discussing who, you know, we mourn the loss of people that we did not know, basically. You know, it's a sad thing that someone could do things like this. You know, I just hope as a human being that people can look beyond their partisan politics, look beyond their religion, look beyond anything else that they want to label themselves as being, and just be human for a moment. I think that's our message. And Clarence, feel free if you want to add anything in. But I think what we want to just say is, you know, be human. And I think that's ultimately what anybody could do.
Yeah, that's the best few words I've heard in a long time. Just be human and treat everyone like you want to be treated. I mean, that's the basic right that anyone has, and regardless of differences, we should all go out and love and treat everybody equally, no matter what their background is, whether you agree or disagree, politically correct or not. Just treat everyone like you want to be treated, the fundamental rule of life.
This reminds me of something, or when you were speaking just then, it reminded me of something from a TV show that I used to watch back in the 80s. There was a quote from the show that said, "People are going to forget you about 10 minutes after you die anyway. And in the end, all that matters is what is true or truly felt and how you treated one another." And, you know, I think that's echoes what you just said. It goes back to how you treat each other. So, you know, treat each other with respect and with human dignity. And again, you know, we just wanted to, as the host, and I know Lee feels the same way, because what he is doing tonight, the reason that he can't be with us tonight is simply because his church is involved in something in memory of those who lost their lives this weekend. You know, compliments to Lee on that. So on to better news, and on to the news. Why don't we get into the news? What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, good deal. Some Doctor Who news, not Dr. Hugh, Doctor Who. Penelope Wilton, which fans of the show, especially New Who, know her as Harriet Jones, Prime Minister. Penelope Wilton is one of Britain's most popular sought-out actresses, as says Doctor Who News. And on the Queen's 90th birthday, she is now Dame Harriet Jones. So I guess, well, Dame Penelope Wilton, but I guess now not only is she Prime Minister, she's a dame. So congratulations. Also, and Clarence, I don't remember, we've not discussed the wedding, not the wedding of River Song, but the husbands of River Song. But did you enjoy Nordal in the Christmas episode?
Nordal, was he the big robot guy?
He was the guy that came to the TARDIS at the very beginning, knocked on the door, and the doctor came with the antlers and was and he ultimately became the robot guy. Yes.
Yeah, that was weird. I don't know if I really enjoyed that part of the episode or not. So apparently this news is telling us he's going to be back.
He will be back in series 10. If you've not watched, have you ever watched Little Britain? Have you ever watched a show called Little Britain?
No, I have not.
Okay, you definitely need to go out and watch Little Britain. It does star Matt Lucas. Basically, think of it as a 30-minute skit comedy with various characters. It is completely hilarious. There's several series of Little Britain, and there's even a Little Britain US, which was kind of funny in itself. But there's a set of recurring characters. Like I said, Matt Lucas is one of the two main stars, and ironically enough, it is voiced as or narrated by the voice of Britain, so to speak, Tom Baker, the fourth Doctor. Yep. So very, very funny, hilariously funny. And yes, Matt Lucas will be back for series 10, which will be interesting because will this be Nordal before he became the Red Robot, or will it be the Red Robot? I guess we'll find out in 2017.
Hi guys, Lee Shackleford.
Hopefully not the Red Robot.
So, Kyle, what is that I hear? What?
I know. Do you hear something?
We want to hear from you.
Definitely. What is it?
Some kind of feedback.
Hi, guys. This is Lee Shackleford chiming in for just a few minutes to share a few thoughts about X-Men Apocalypse, starting off with the caveat that I haven't seen it. But, Kyle urged me to participate in the conversation anyway. It's just, life has intervened, and this is the only movie in this, the X-Men series that I have not yet seen. And I have always enjoyed them. I was not a big X-Men fan in the comics. I know that's heretical. I used to work in a comic book store, and at that time, that may have been the zenith of X-Men popularity, and I got just plain sick of them. But then the first of the films came out, and I thought it was one of the best superhero films ever. And I don't think anything else has quite lived up to that, and maybe that's because I thought it did such a splendid job of being an origin story and of exploring, some of the interpersonal aspects of these unique and interesting characters. And of course, it's got Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen in it, so for heaven's sake, not to mention a really terrific supporting cast of all these other fine players. That one's going to be the gold standard in my mind. One of the things that has interested me, though, in the franchise from the beginning, and I guess this is why I appreciated being asked to chime in, even though I haven't seen this movie that you're talking about, is a story that I think a lot of listeners of this show probably know, but if they don't, I think it's a story worth telling. Ian McKellen was approached to play Magneto the first time, and he said no. And, he had a lot of his own reasons. But Bryan Singer spoke to him personally, and Bryan knows that Ian is famously gay. And he said, what we're telling here is a story about a group of people who are being hounded because of how they were born. We want to tell a story about people who are being unfairly treated because they're different from most other people. And it ain't their fault. And what they're going to find instead is a unique appreciation of what makes them special. That to be a mutant doesn't have to be a bad thing. And that was the turnaround point for Ian McKellen. What really grabbed him, what made him want to be part of the franchise, was that simply because it is an ongoing story about people coming to grips with a reality about how they were born that sets them apart from a lot of the rest of society. And so we're having this discussion just a few days after this terrible thing that happened in Orlando, where 49, 50 people were killed. And we're still sorting out why, if there was a why, but it sure looks like they lost their lives for being gay. And it brings us back to the fictional world of a film like this and reminds us that there's tremendous resonance in these stories that we tell. There's a reason why we keep coming back to telling these stories again and again. There's a reason why the X-Men franchise is important to us as a culture. Why we're going to keep making these movies and keep telling these stories, and why the comics keep grabbing and holding people's imaginations and interest. One of the reasons why I haven't moved heaven and earth to go see this movie is because the early reviews said that they've lost the hook, they've lost the thread, that this is a film that's about explosions and seeing the mutants use their powers and forgetting who they are as people. And if that was true, then I felt we were set up for disappointment. That's not something I wanted to spend my money and time in the theater with. But I haven't seen it. So tell me I'm wrong, guys. Tell me that the real person's story, the story about who these people are as characters, that's still present in this movie. Okay? And I'm going to shut up because, and I can't stress this strongly enough, I haven't seen this movie. Okay? Have fun, guys. I hope to be with you in the next episode.
All right, well, talk about crossing your own time stream. That was a little bit interesting. What do you say?
Oh, yes, I have to agree with you on that.
I agree, 100%. So enough on the news. So let's get into what we're actually here to talk about tonight. The Age of Apocalypse, X-Men Apocalypse, and Apocalypse in general.
They took him. Raven, the world needs the X-Men.
I'm not a hero.
Students look up to you.
If I'm going to teach your kids something, I'm going to teach them how to fight. Follow me.
You're her. I'm not afraid of him. Magneto, he's my father.
What?
Him and my mom, they did.
No, I know.
Not all of us can control our powers.
Then don't.
Apocalypse means to destroy this world.
It's all of us against a god and the most powerful beings on Earth.
You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, good deal. So, do you tell me, you're the new view of comics. How much do you know about Apocalypse?
I know absolutely nothing. Unfortunately, most of my knowledge of X-Men comes from the 90s cartoon.
Okay, so do you remember Apocalypse being in the cartoon?
No, I do not, but that doesn't mean he wasn't.
Okay.
I just don't
Yeah, he was in the cartoon. I don't remember the exact story, but I do remember him being in the cartoon. Apocalypse was created back in 1986 by a writer by the name of Louise Simonson and was drawn at the time by Jackson Geiss. He first appeared in X Factor number 5. Like I said, that was in 1986. I remember reading Apocalypse back then, did not see him as being the big bad character that he turned into.
Well, that's funny because now, I mean, he's kind of, from my opinion of the movie and just hearing about him in general, he's kind of the big the biggest and baddest of them all. Is that true? A true statement, or is that kind of just portrayed in the movie for him to be that way? I mean, is that really how he is in the comics?
Let me answer it this way. If you keep bringing back Doomsday to fight Superman, there are only so many times you can bring Doomsday back before Doomsday becomes not the big threat of Doomsday. You get where I'm going there? If you keep bringing back the character that killed Superman in his first appearance, if you keep bringing back this same character and having them fight over and over and over, he loses as Doomsday some of that mystique of being so all powerful if you keep bringing him back. And that's what I kind of mean about Apocalypse is you keep bringing him back over and over and over. So for me in the comics, he's no worse than Mr. Sinister. He's no worse than any of the other X-Men villains.
Huh. Interesting. Go ahead. Go ahead and tell me, is that your background? Tell me, give me your thoughts on who exactly Apocalypse is.
Okay. Apocalypse, as the story unfolded, became a ancient Egyptian. He was allegedly thousands of years old. He was in Saba-Nur. Can't spell that if you ask me to, but he allegedly was created, or was born, not created, was born in one of the first, if not the first mutant back in ancient Egyptian times, and through his powers, which his powers make him also, or almost, not also, but almost omnipotent or all-powerful, because he can change his shape, he can convert energy, he's got regenerative properties. Do
they say what his initial powers were?
No, not really. That I remember. And again, Apocalypse is a character that I've obviously known about, but not one that it's like, oh wow, here comes Apocalypse again. It's more turned into a sense of, oh well, here we go with Apocalypse again.
Interesting.
That's why when they did, or when they said, here we're coming with X-Men Apocalypse, I think had they done true adaptation to one of the famous storylines with Apocalypse, I think some of the critics of this movie may have been a little less silenced. I mean, I thought it was a good movie, but I think if they had went maybe with the storyline of I'll just go ahead and say it, the Age of Apocalypse, I think that would have been a tighter story for the movie than what we actually saw.
So how exactly does the Age of Apocalypse differentiate itself from what we saw in the movie?
Let me backtrack just a bit before I answer that. With X-Men, with the Apocalypse character, Apocalypse, just as he did in the movie, normally has 4 horsemen, and those are representative, by death, famine, pestilence, and war. In the comic, his first death was Angel. And now that was kind of interesting in the movie, that we saw Angel shed his wings, the feathered wings, and be replaced by the metal wings. So you remember that in the movie?
Yes, certainly.
All right. And I forgot to mention this, or we forgot to mention this a few minutes ago. If you've not seen the movie, which we hope you probably have, just be aware, spoilers, we're not going to not have any spoilers in this review. We assume that since the movie's been out almost a month now that you've seen it, spoilers abound. So back to what I was saying. Angel was one of the first horsemen of Apocalypse back in the comics. What is the Age of Apocalypse? Back in 1995, Marvel wanted to do something cool, per se, with the X-Men. So they said, what if Xavier's son, David, decided he wanted to go back into the past and prevent his father from having to fight Magneto? And if his father didn't fight Magneto, then he would have been able to have been there for David growing up. He goes back and attempts to assassinate Magneto, thinking, if I get rid of Magneto, then Charles will not have to form the X-Men, everything will be hunky-dory, and everything will be great. Can you guess what happened instead of David going back and killing Magneto? What do you think happened?
Really have no clue, but it seems, as with most time movies like this, it never happened exactly like you planned. So I'm figuring it went terribly wrong.
So let's assume that you're correct, which you are. It did go terribly wrong. So if he went back to kill Magneto, who did he kill instead?
Don't tell me Xavier.
Correct. He kills Xavier, and by doing that, it alters the timeline. So instead of having Magneto become, or for Eric becoming Magneto, yes, he still took the name Magneto, but by seeing Xavier sacrifice himself for him, because Xavier actually jumped in front of Magneto and prevented him from being killed. That's how he got killed. It changed Magneto's outlook, and so Eric became a benevolent person, did not become the terrorist, did not do any of those things, and he, in turn, in memory of Charles, started the X-Men.
Wow.
Now the difference in that was, for whatever reason, not having Magneto there as the bad guy, not having whatever Charles was doing in that ripple effect in the pond, when Apocalypse emerged, Apocalypse basically took over. All the X-Men books during that time, like Uncanny X-Men, ceased publication and was replaced, I believe, by Astonishing X-Men. New Mutants was replaced, Generation X was replaced by X Generation. There was X-Force was replaced by Gambit and the External. So, I mean,
that's an interesting device to be able to explore some different stories with the characters.
Right.
Of course, I'm figuring it goes back to the right way at some point, but I still like that premise that something can go horribly wrong to kind of send you on this alternate path. And of course, these books change likewise.
Now, you're very correct. So that, to me, was the highlight of the Apocalypse story, because you are correct. There was one character who was the doorway out. What I mean by that was there was one person that remembered how things were supposed to be. You wound up having everything restored. In doing so, they did bring over 4 characters from the Age of Apocalypse. Those 4 characters, they could have made better choices, in my opinion, but they brought over this creature called Sugar Man. They brought over someone who was called the son of Apocalypse, called Holocaust. They brought over a evil version of Hank McCoy called the Dark Beast, and they brought over another version of Cable that did not have the techno-organic virus that prevented him from having full access to his powers like Cable normally would. So you had 2 versions of Cable, 2 versions of Beast, and all of it.
When you said brought back, did they come up with an impressive storyline to allow them to come back, or is just like, we're back to the old ways, we're going to keep these characters?
Well, in story, there was a point where the characters in the story realized this was not how things were supposed to be, because of the character that remembered how things were supposed to be. The ultimate end of this bookend book of this Age of Apocalypse story ended with something happening that would in turn restore things to the way they were supposed to be. So when that act happened, there were 4 characters that I can't recall at the moment how they got transported or how they maintained coming back into the normal reality, but they kept 4 characters back into the normal reality.
So a story about comic book heroes who take an alternate path in which only a few people or almost none know about the real reality, but it turns back the right way at the end. Does that remind you of anything?
Yeah, exactly. And you're referring to the last X-Men movie, right?
Well, I'm kind of just referring to the whole rebirth thing.
True.
On a large, grander scheme, is kind of the same.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that, but you're very right. But see, where I was going with that was you've already kind of used that plot point with Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
So you can't really go back and do that in the very next movie.
Yeah, agreed.
Let me add one other thing about Apocalypse. Now, we've seen Magneto become an X-Man. We've seen Sabretooth ultimately join the X-Men. We've seen Rogue, who actually started out as a villain briefly, has been an X-Men since a member of the X-Men since the 80s. Do you think it is possible for Apocalypse to join the X-Men?
It should not be. It really should not be. I've not seen, even from the movie, I haven't seen a glimmer of goodness from this guy.
Okay.
So I don't think so, but I'm guessing I'm wrong.
How did you know that you were falling into a trap there? Yes, you're wrong, to a point. And here's how this happened. In one of the most recent stories in the last probably 10 years, there is actually a clone of Apocalypse that was incubated and grown up in this virtual reality, and I would say he's probably 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, somewhere in that age range. He's not bad. He's a kid and knows that he has the potential to grow up and become Apocalypse again, but you're seeing it from this kid that says, I know what I'm supposed to become, but I'm not bad. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is a different take on it.
Very different. And he is a member of the group of X-Men, of the time displaced X-Men that came from the past are now stuck in the present version. He's traveling around with them, and his name, instead of En Sabanur, he's Evan Sabanur, which I think is interesting.
Wow.
So get into the movie. What did you think? How did you like it?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good, solid movie. Was it the best X-Men movie? Probably not. Was it the worst? Nowhere close. So I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the kind of time lock in the 80s that we saw in the movie. And I also enjoyed seeing some of the characters that we haven't seen for a while. So I really, really enjoyed the movie. What about you?
All right. Well, I want to hear some more from you before I get into it. So I want to go down the list a little bit. Moira McTaggart. We saw the return of Moira McTaggart. What did you think of that?
That's Magneto's, not Magneto. That's the professor's girlfriend, right?
Correct.
Okay. I thought that was interesting. I don't know if she played any type of pivotal role in the movie. I mean, I think we could have not had her just as easily. I mean, I think she was fine doing the role she played.
Was she not the ultimate reason that Apocalypse was resurrected in the beginning? Because it is because of her sneaking in to that site that the light shined down from above, because they had that covered until she knocked the guy out or whatever she did to get in.
Yeah, but I think you basically had a group of worshipers there praying to him. So I don't think she really impacted it that much. I think it probably would have happened anyway.
All right. So what do you think about Storm? How did you like Storm? This is the first time we've seen a non-Halle Berry Storm. So what did you think?
She was good, different. I would like to know from the expert here, is this anywhere near her true origin? In the old movies, they never talked really about her origin, so we really have no basis to in the movie universe to put this against. Is this anything close to Storm's true origin?
Yes and no at the same time. And yes equals she was a thief in Africa, essentially Cairo, which is Egypt, which is in Africa. She is from Africa. So yes, she was a thief. Yes, she lived on the streets. Did she have brown hair? No. Did Apocalypse change her hair from brown to white? No. So that is the yes, that is the no.
Yeah, well, I can deal with the hair thing. It's kind of cool, the whole thief thing, though. I thought that was kind of cool, but I had no idea that it was true. I thought they were just making it up for the movie.
No, it's actually true. In the comic, she was she actually met Xavier when Xavier was in Cairo, and she stole his wallet. He stopped her in her tracks and froze her and went back and got his wallet and kept going. So but she had the long white hair the blue eyes and all that. She didn't have the brown hair. She never had brown hair. The interesting thing about how they made her look, there was a time in the late 80s when she went through her punk stage where she shaved her hair down to a mohawk, went from wearing the cloaks and the big billowing capes and wore leather with spikes and all that. And there was a time when she didn't have her powers and she was still leading the X-Men. So that was a little bit of a nod to how she looked in the late 80s.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that character in the movie. I thought the actor played her well, and I'll be interested to see what they do with her in further movies, since, at the end of the movie, saw her walking into the mansion.
So what did you think about Nightcrawler? Because that's another character that was recast.
Yes, Nightcrawler. We've seen him in, I think, the first two original X-Men movies.
Second one, I think.
The second one?
Yeah, the second one.
I like the whole thing of the movie being in the 80s time frame. I thought it allowed for a lot of cool, catchy things to be presented in the movie, like the Michael Jackson jacket and things like that. Of course, he's younger, so again, different actor. I thought the way they portrayed his powers were pretty much on point with what I've already known from him in the past movies. So I thought he was pretty much the same. The one thing I did like that they kind of expanded on that I didn't even know from the past, or I didn't even think about, was his ability to carry multiple people. In the end of the movie, that kind of came into play as the movie wrapped up, and it was pretty cool to see that because I never really thought of it, to be honest.
Yeah, it usually if I remember his powers correctly, the more people he carries, the more strain it is on him, and the more strain it is on them. Because usually the people, not only do you have the fire and brimstone smell, but it kind of makes them nauseated for him to teleport. And them, it doesn't really bother him except physically the strain of taking somebody else with him. But I thought they did a very good job. What did you think of Angel? Because he was another character that was recast.
We saw Angel in 3, I believe. I liked this one a little bit better, although the one in the last movie didn't really have any. He really didn't do much. I don't think he spoke probably a paragraph of lines the whole movie. So this one was kind of the same, but he was more prominent. I like the way they portrayed his abilities a lot. So in the way him and Nightcrawler were in the cage match was pretty cool as well. So yeah, I enjoyed his character. He didn't really bring nothing new to the table. So that being said, I still enjoyed him. What about you? Did you think he lived up to?
I did. I really did. I thought, and I'm agreeing with you. And this is no disrespect to the actor who played him in the X3, but there was no substance to the character other than, oh look, you've got Angel in the movie. That was really the only purpose that he played in the movie, was being there, because they could have interchanged any character as opposed to having Angel in there at that point. But yeah, I thought he did a good job. I loved the look of the metal wings, as well as, you actually saw the wings shed off, because that's true to the story. The reason that Apocalypse was able to take Warren and to take him and change him the way he did, Warren's wings had been amputated. He had been attacked and his wings had been damaged, and they ultimately, to save his life, had to be amputated. Apocalypse restored his wings by giving him the metal wings.
Yeah, something is funny. If Apocalypse would have survived, he always could have had a career in being Apocalypse, the suit designer.
Yeah, exactly. Let me make you a new suit.
Yeah, it's kind of hilarious. He was designing the suit. I thought that was pretty funny.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Cyclops, he was recast. What did you think of him?
Cyclops, again, I like it. I like the fact that they were kind of just being kids, being 80s kids. I'm going to leave the mansion and go watch a movie. So I thought that was pretty cool. First time we've got an introduction to his powers, which I thought it was great how they introduced it. But, how could he at one point cut a tree in half, and then the other point, a door from a bathroom shielded a guy from getting destroyed. But I do like his character. I like these characters being kids because it gives us a side to them that we haven't seen before, and I just thought it was really great. What about you? Did you like seeing the younger kid?
And once again, and you'll understand in just a minute why I'm doing this. But I'm gonna hold my thought for a second. But I will say this on Scott. I did like the guy. I did not like the fact, because I had forgotten about the fact that they used the ultimate ages of Scott and Alex. Their ages are reversed. I did not like that because Alex is supposed to be the younger brother. Scott's supposed to be the older brother.
Was Alex even in the previous movie? Because if he was, I do not remember him.
Yes, Alex was in not the last movie, but the movie before that with the first class. Yes.
Yeah, I do not remember him in the movie at all.
Yeah,
maybe I need to go back and watch it.
Havoc is his name, and I think it's the same actor, but I think the actor had brown hair and they had his hair dyed in the first movie.
Interesting. But I like the dynamic between the brothers. I thought that was pretty cool, and the older brother kind of being the older, experienced guy who's already been to the school for the gifted and was kind of leading his brother in the way.
Yes. And I think you can find this on YouTube. And since you've made several references to the 80s, one of the things that I liked was they did looked like an advertisement or a commercial. Instead of lifestyles of the rich and famous, it was like lifestyles of the whatever and whatever, something replacing those two words. And it was, come now to the illustrious Westchester, to the Xavier escape or estate and whatever.
Yeah.
That was kind of neat because it threw back to the 80s.
Yeah, and oh my God, Knight Rider commercial, Knight Rider intro was awesome.
That was cool. All right. Well, I want to mention Quicksilver. What did you think of Quicksilver?
Again, some of the most jaw-dropping moments in the movie, as with the previous one, is when he's doing his thing. However unbelievable it is, if you think about it. I thought they may have probably just went a little bit too far with the coordination in that one scene. You know what I'm talking about, when the mansion gets destroyed. They kind of went a little bit too far, but it was funny and it was cool, and I got a good kick out of it. It was probably one of the most exciting parts of the movie.
I thought, I agree with you for starters, but for seconds, I would wonder if there has been some agreement made between Marvel or quote Disney or / Disney and Fox that says, okay, you can have Scarlet Witch, you can have Quicksilver, because we did see the other version of Quicksilver in the Avengers 2. However, he dies at the end. And ironically, even though we saw a younger version of Wanda in the last X-Men movie, she was nowhere to be seen in this movie.
That is true.
She wasn't even mentioned in this movie. So
now, in the mutant origin, are they still brother and sister?
No, they're still twins, and they're still,
they made no mention of her in the X-Men movies, though.
Right? No, they did show a younger sister named Wanda, and when they introduced Quicksilver in the last one, yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
She was playing with something when they tried to come and recruit him in the last movie, or when they came to see him in the last movie, they made reference, or she said something about my sister's playing, and he called her Wanda. And, my thought was, okay, how can she be 8 or 9 years old? That's your twin sister.
Yeah, but to that point, the Quicksilver in the X-Men movies is so much greater than the one in the Marvel, in the Disney movies. This is probably the only case where they outdid, X-Men.
All right, so I'm going to mention, because I'm holding a character here, but I want to mention Psylocke. What did you think of her?
I thought that Olivia Munn did a good job. I don't think her character was particularly impressive in any way. It seems as if Beast should not stand a chance against her with her weapons, honestly. And
now you do know. Okay, so I want to stop you for a moment. I do want to make sure you understand, because maybe if you understand her powers, you'll understand why he didn't have a chance. You know, I had completely forgotten until you mentioned him. I had forgotten Beast. You know,
well, he's been around all the movies. You know,
yeah, he has.
Beast is kind of just there.
Yeah, maybe it's selective forgetting, because in the comics, older Beast, I can't stand older Beast in the comics. I mean, I do not like that character. In the comics, younger Beast, who ironically they're both in the present at the moment, I like him. But the older Beast, I do not like the older Beast in the comics. But
before we go on with a little more Beast discussion, I was going to say it's highly unlikely that this guy can build a jet in his in the hangar. Is his intelligence super enhanced as well? I thought he was already smart. But
no, he's a genius. He's genius level.
Is that due to his mutant abilities? Or
no, I think that has nothing to do, if I remember correctly, has nothing to do with his mutation, because I think that was the irony of his mutation. He was beast-like, but yet he is a natural genius.
And can at this point he can just change from being beast to a normal human by just drinking some serum?
No, that's something they created probably to save money and budget for the movie, to be honest with you.
And why mentioning budget, another character that is blue that is also in her own skin a lot.
Yep, Mystique. I wish they would. Well, for starters, the comics, she's not a reptile in the comics. You know, she has the blue skin. Yes, she has the reddish burgundy hair. But she just has blue skin and burgundy hair. She doesn't look like a lizard, or, the scales and whatever. And when she changes her appearance, it's not scaled looking. It's like more of a flowing look is how I envisioned it, not as the way they do it in the movie.
Well, I guess that adds a little bit more style to it, because, I mean, if you just saw a person just painted blue with no type of texture, it would look weird, I think.
Honestly, you want me to tell you what I honestly think the reason they did it?
What's that?
In 2000, that was for teenage boys to see the original actress Rebecca Romaine Stamos as Mystique, basically blue body paint.
Hey, I'm not going to complain about that one.
So, I mean, if you boil it all down to it, they got rid of the white costume that she normally wears and made her basically have no clothes on and blue body paint. That's where I think they were going with that, because they basically got away with having her with nothing on, as being her costume.
And I have to ask, you mentioned Apocalypse's son or reincarnation being an X-Men? Is Mystique ever an X-Man?
Yep, but never trust her. I mean, interestingly, Mystique is the adopted mother of Rogue in the comics.
Interesting.
She's the birth mother of, can you guess who?
I have no idea.
You've already talked about him tonight.
Nightcrawler?
Yes.
Seriously.
In the comics, she is Nightcrawler's biological birth mother.
Wow. So I wonder, will they bring that to fruition as they did with the whole Magneto Quicksilver thing?
I don't think so, because unless they say that when she met Charles as a child, she had morphed into looking like a child, that she was actually older than that.
But doesn't she have age? I guess she technically doesn't have to age if she doesn't want to. She could be any age. She could be like the lady off Game of Thrones.
Yeah, well, she's like she's about the same age, if not older, than Wolverine.
That's what I figured.
And speaking of, we got to see Wolverine.
Yeah, he made a little cameo, trapped in a box, and was let loose as a raging beast from what facility?
The Weapon X facility.
Yeah, so we make a call back to, is it the second Wolverine movie?
Well, no,
The second X-Men movie. That's right. Yeah.
Second X-Men movie, X2. Yeah.
Yeah. So we make a call back to X2, go back to the mountain, I guess, wherever this is, the waterfall, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. And the scene, there's a famous scene of him escaping and going off into the wilderness out of the Weapon X program. And that was what they were playing up in that scene, was him breaking out and going, escaping and going into the wilderness. So that's where they were going with that.
Yeah, which they never show that in 2, so that's pretty cool. To finally have that scene.
So let me ask you. So I lost my train of thought, but I was talking about Betsy, or talking about Psylocke, and I said I wanted to mention her powers and make sure you understood. So in your mind, what is Betsy's or Psylocke's powers?
First time hearing Betsy, but it seems as if she has the power to project energy into certain forms as weapons, or either that or expand that energy over an existing weapon. I don't know which one is it.
It is actually, she is similar in powers to another character who I will mention in just a minute. She's a telekinetic. She can concentrate her powers into basically a physical, a physical object. Even though you can see it and somebody can feel it, that's actually psychic energy that she's made that sword. She's most famous while she was using the sword mainly, and yes, she has used the sword in the comic, but she's mostly famous for her psychic knife, which comes out of her back of her hand, and she incapacitates you by jamming that into your brain, and it is basically a frying of your brain.
And we didn't see that in the movie.
No, we didn't see that in the movie, which I wanted really to see it, but
we saw her kind of mosey off at the end of the movie, so I'm guessing we'll see her again.
I hope we see her again. Betsy is actually one of my favorite X-Men characters. The look that they gave Olivia Munn was the best representation from comic, at least for the X-Men, from comic to screen, that they've adapted the look of her.
Are you talking about for authenticity, or?
Yeah, for authenticity. I mean, if you find her in the comic and you find her in this, to me, it's a perfect representation.
Well, Kyle, I kind of beg to differ.
Okay, tell me.
I did see Jubilee in this somewhere in the movie, so she's pretty true to her 90s cartoon anyway. I don't know how much she's true to the comic book itself, or is she even a comic character, or was she in the cartoon first? I don't know.
I'm sorry, were you talking about a character? I'm sorry, you got me.
Jubilee.
Yeah, I don't talk about Jubilee.
Whoa, have we hit a pain point here?
I'm sorry,
wow.
I do not like Jubilee. I've never liked Jubilee.
So she was in fact the comic character first, or was she just in the TV?
She was a comic character first, and I don't know. She irritated me. I mean, literally, that character. I've never liked her.
Really?
Yep. I think one of the reasons I didn't like her, there was one point that she was rude to Kitty Pryde in the comic. And it was like, okay, Kitty was there long before you were. Do not disrespect Kitty.
Oh man, it goes deep, doesn't it?
It goes deep. I do not like Jubilee. So there we go. I do not, let it be on record. Episode 9. I do not like Jubilee.
The character that is to not be mentioned.
Yes, exactly. The character that I've not been mentioning, not the character that I haven't been mentioning, is one.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Oh, no.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to wait till you got ready to say the name, and I was going to blurt out Sansa Stark. But go ahead.
Yeah, it was the one, the only Sansa Stark. Jean Grey.
Yeah.
So what did you think, Jean Grey?
I thought she did a really good job.
I'm waiting for a but here.
I don't. The issues she was dealing with in this movie seems like the same issues she was dealing with in the first X-Men movie. So that was a little weird to me. I'm like, her power should be way less if we're going along the same arc. But of course, times have changed, so it could be different. I don't know. But she seems way powerful now than she ever did in the first X-Men movie.
Mm-hmm. So go back to what you just said. Yes, I think we did establish in the last movie that it did away with X3 because we saw how it ended and we saw Scott was alive. So we know that the things that happened in X3 did not happen. And I did like that end joke when they were talking about going to see Empire Strikes Back and they make the joke about it. The third one's always the worst.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
That was good. But no, I can say nothing bad about her portrayal of Jean Grey. Nothing bad.
Yeah, and I thought it was cool as well how they kind of showed us the beginnings of that relationship with her and Scott, and also kind of why Scott hates Wolverine.
Yes, exactly.
I thought it was really cool.
Exactly. That scene that we saw at the end, when the big fight with Apocalypse, when they said, just let go. I promise you, that was chills. That sent chills whenever because I was like, are we finally about to see what people should have seen in the end of X2, and they maybe couldn't do it because of technology or budget and didn't see in X3? Are we finally going to see something close to the Phoenix? And what did we see?
Definitely saw the Phoenix.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you, at the end of X2, when they're over the lake and she does that thing, doesn't she have an aura about her? Are you just saying it isn't portrayed in the same way that you think it should have been?
It was portrayed. I mean, look, back then, whenever they did that in the movie 2002 for X2, I think it was 2002, for the second X-Men, totally loved what they did. I mean, I loved the whole, concept of what they did. And ironically enough, I read the movie adaptation book before, like a novel version, before I went to see X2 in theaters because they had released the book first. So I was thinking, oh, I know what's going to happen. And in the original adaptation novelization of it, Jean didn't die in that. She was actually saved. So I'm sitting there watching going, wait, she's supposed to be getting back on the plane. So but yeah, they did a good job there. But no, this was actually, she's full on, you see the bird, you see the fire, you see her powered up. And that made me cry. I mean,
and also fly. Did she do that in any of the older movies? I can't remember.
No, she's never flown.
Well, levitate or
right.
Use her
we see her moving the plane, kind of levitating the plane, and we assume that she's moving with it, but you can tell she's just standing and everything is green screen beside her. But no, this is actual levitated and all that good stuff. So fantastic.
That being said, is Jean the most powerful mutant? She certainly, went at it on Apocalypse at the end there.
Possibly. And see, the question that you're asking about being the most powerful mutant or any character, in my opinion, becomes subjective because it depends on if you make them too powerful, you ultimately have to retire them or get rid of them or kill them, because if you make them too powerful, then how can a bad guy be a threat to them?
Yeah, I mean, and that was pretty much the whole premise of X3, I think.
Right.
They kind of just made her all powerful. Can't nobody stop me, and they ultimately had to. Okay, we won't talk about that.
Yeah, but they went totally wrong with it. I mean, the whole making her look like a bird and all that. Meh. Yeah. No.
What do you think about the whole Jennifer Lawrence choking thing controversy? I thought that was kind of dumb in a way. I mean, I am very sensitive to women's rights, but it's a movie. People get killed and beat up in this movie. Maybe it was poor taste to do it as a press image. I kind of agree with that part, but man, the stuff you see in movies, we're going to fuss about this one little scene, still that was put out there.
Yeah, I'm going to preface my answer by repeating what you just said about no disrespect to violence against women or anything like that. But I will agree with you that that was a case of poor thinking, someone thinking, oh, well, this looks like a good image, and not realizing maybe some people might not like it, because yes, it was an image from the movie, but it ultimately put a man holding a woman, strangling her on a big billboard. So I can see both sides, but I think the ultimate answer to that question is someone just didn't think.
Yeah, true.
All right, the movie in general, how would you rate the whole story of Apocalypse trying to do what he's doing, the whole story in itself? How would you rate it as a movie? If you had to give it from 1 to 5, what would you rate it?
Yeah, let me just preface my rating with saying that I really enjoyed the movie. I don't think it was the best X-Men movie. I don't think it was the worst. I love the 80 references. As far as the story arc, the good thing about the story arc was that it allowed us to see these different characters in these different situations. As far as the outcome of what having Apocalypse around kind of led to or ultimately ended in, I don't think it was that impressive. But seeing these characters in these different situations, hanging out at the mansion, the end sequence where we kind of saw them do more teamwork, which is really, really great. You kind of saw that in the last Avengers movie as well. A lot of superheroes working together. I really, really liked that. All that being said, again, the art of Apocalypse, I don't think was impressive at all. So I would have to give it 3.5 stars or cups or whatever we're giving it.
Okay. All right. Here's my take. If I were looking at it without Jean, if I were looking at it from just the story, Age of Apocalypse, the entire story, I want to see an X-Men movie that has a little bit more character development and less let's destroy the planet. I want to see, like I said, more character and less destruction. So from that point, I'm going to say a 3.3 to 3.5 cups of coffee, and that would be good. Now, add in the Gene factor. Add in that I got to see what I have been waiting for since I found out that there's going to be an X-Men movie in 1989 or whenever. The fact that I see Gene performed so brilliantly, in my opinion, and then on top of that, to get to see the scene, and not only to see her unleash her powers, but to see the Bird of Fire, which I have always been a Jean fan, and to get to see that, I'm going to give it 10 cups of coffee, not 5 on Jean alone. Movie, 3.5, Jean, 10.
And added to that, I think a lot of the things I thought were really good about this movie, you mentioned character development. I think a lot of the good points in this movie alone were the character developments. Seeing Magneto go through his crisis with his family, seeing Jean Grey, seeing Scott Summers, seeing Nightcrawler. I thought the character development in this movie, though it's stuff we should probably already know, I thought seeing it on the screen, since we've not seen it before in any of the other X-Men movies, was easily one of the most likable parts of this film, and I really enjoyed that. Again, the story itself, I can give or take. I'm just add to that. So far, this movie has grossed domestically is with 138 million, almost 139 million, and foreign 343 million. So it's not doing that great on the homeland. But, almost 500 million worldwide is not bad.
Not bad. And, I had forgotten about Magneto, not in the same aspect that I had forgotten about Beast, but you're right. and the actor that's playing him,
oh, he's so
does
good.
a great job as Magneto. And on top of that, the only thing I don't like about yes, I agree, he did have character development. However, the only thing I don't like is in the comics, this is one family that we've never heard about. I've never heard of the child that could talk to animals, or, this other wife that they showed. So that's something that they created for the movie itself.
Yeah, with that being said, I can easily see him trying to get away, get away from it all after almost after the events of the last movie. I can see him getting away and going somewhere and try to live off the grid, trying to live a virtuous life. And it was so heartbreaking to see what happened, man. I really enjoyed those few scenes with him and his family. Him just being a regular worker guy,
right?
And he gets in trouble for saving somebody. So I mean, just tugs at you a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Magneto. Yes, he's the very first, literally the very first X-Men villain from X-Men #1. He's as old as they are, created at the same time as they were. But he traditionally always, you always comes back to the side of good. And I think the thing that makes him such a great character, he's often labeled in the villain role, but you see and you can understand what made him become who he is. And I'm not saying that anything that the bad stuff that he's done, does that absolve him of that, but it does give you a better understanding, as opposed to someone that says, I want money, I want power, I want fame.
Definitely.
We have gone through X-Men Apocalypse, so I want to touch base on another comic book revelation that happened in Marvel recently. What do you think about the revelation? Again, spoilers. Captain America has been revealed to have been working for Hydra all along, and that's all I know.
Yeah, and you said this is a different arc versus the normal?
No. This is in Captain America. This is in his Steve Rogers Captain America #1. We find out that he's Hail Hydra.
I just think they're trying to sell some comic books, man. I don't know. I'm pretty sure in a few issues it's gonna all go down the drain. But to me, it's they're just throwing a Hail Mary with this one. But it could be interesting, nonetheless.
I agree. And coming out of Comics Day, since the last couple of recordings that we've done have been on Wednesday, I'll run down a couple of things that came out today. We've had Civil War II #2, and I mentioned that in our last recording about Civil War #1, that there was a character that died, and then there was another character that was about to die, and if the about to die character, who is the female, actually dies, I will not be happy. I've not read it yet, but that came out today, and even if I had read it, I wouldn't give any spoilers. But there's an X-Men Civil War II #1, shows Medusa, Magneto, Jean, Psylocke, Storm, and several other characters on the front cover. Titans Rebirth #1, Uncanny X-Men, and Justice League. That's at least what I got. And happily enough, front and center of Titans Rebirth is one of my favorite characters, Donna Troy, back in her black and white costume. So very happy about that.
And she is one of the characters that had to be reintroduced because of the timeline switch thing, Rebirth.
Yeah, she had been reintroduced as a character that I would say was virtually unrecognizable to Donna Troy. Now, the fact that this is going to be Donna Troy, original Wonder Girl, all that good stuff, I couldn't be happier.
Now, I don't want to get deep on this, but did she just get her memories back, or they somehow brought her out from the dead?
I've read, she was already back, but again, didn't act anything like the Donna of old, and had a different different storyline or different origin as the Donna of old. But I did notice from reading a 2-page spoiler of Titans Rebirth, it showed Dick Grayson, the original Robin, or now known as Nightwing, and Wally West, who just returned, the older Flash, the older Wally West, when Wally touched Nightwing or Dick Grayson, there was an electric spark and that caused him to remember Wally. So I'm thinking that we will see him do the same thing, and that will maybe start restoring some of their memories.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Keep us posted.
I will, and we might want to, when Lee gets back, do an entire episode on Who is Donna Troy, because that would take us at least 2 or 3 hours to talk about who is Donna Troy.
Oh, wow.
All right. Before we go, I want to mention one thing. I want to make a correction since we're talking about other comic books. When we were doing our discussion on last episode, episode 8, about our question and answers about what is DC Rebirth, I made a comment about Milestone Media that was inaccurate. And the statement was that Pandora had merged the Milestone universe and the DC universe and the Wildstorm universe, and I said I thought that they changed that. Well, that didn't sit right with me because I really wasn't sure about it. So I went back and I saw that in actuality, the Milestone characters had already been integrated with DC prior to then. So I was wrong in that, and I wanted to correct that before we went further. So there we go.
Cool.
All right. Well, Clarence, is there anything you're working on that you would like to share with us?
Nothing too exciting right now. I mean, work's been kind of bogging me down, so I hadn't had a lot of time for other projects. But I'll just say keep your eyes on my blog, www.iamclarence.com, and follow me on Twitter if you want to at Wood and Ball. And Cal, what about yourself? Any cool or interesting things you've been?
Well, we just got our latest episode of Doctor Who Podshock out. It's episode, I believe, 336. We were reviewing or doing comparison companions, and I think you listened to it. So really quickly, did you enjoy the episode?
Oh yeah. I really enjoyed it. I especially love. Is it? I can't remember his name.
Dave.
Well, no. The guy who loves Clara as I do.
Lee.
Yeah. No, it wasn't Lee. I think it was.
Well, there was only 4 of us on there, so it would have to have been either.
Who's the older guy?
That would be Dave.
Yeah, definitely Dave. It was Dave, because he kind of shares that love of Clara that I have, and I really enjoyed him, talking the praises of how wonderful an actor Clara is, and he actually got me interested in checking out some of her other stuff, which he plugged in that episode as well. So if you like Clara as well as other companions, I suggest you go out and check out that episode and check out the show that Dave was talking about in there to see as well.
All right. And speaking of Dave, and I haven't actually mentioned this to him yet, but I know he listens to our podcast, so I'll go ahead and mention it here. I want to invite Dave on, and I've already got a list of about 10 or 12 questions that I would like to go through. So I want to get some insight, because I know Dave was watching Doctor Who from the very beginning, and I know we've not had a Doctor Who-centric episode. So over the next, I'm not sure how many episodes, I want to get he and Ian and Lewis on all separately and get their insights. And so even though I've not told them yet, if they listen to this podcast, they'll hear my intention probably before I tell them. So that's what's been going on with me. However, before we go, we've actually got some feedback. So I want to share that with everyone and give us our feedback from episode 8.
Hi guys, it's Matthew. Just want to let you know that I really enjoyed the last episode of Discussing Who, episode 8. I'm a long-time comics reader myself. I probably got into it sometime around the same time as Kyle, or at least it seems like we have some similar history in the things we read. And for those of us who lived through Crisis on Infinite Earths and all the other changes that DC went through, it's, you can kind of keep sense of it in your head after you read it all as it happened, but hearing Kyle explain it to Clarence, as a newer reader, really drives home just how convoluted it's all gotten, which is somewhat ironic given that the original purpose of Crisis was to simplify and streamline the DC universe. And in fairness to Crisis, I think it really did, at least in those early years, aside from some hiccups like Hawkman. But I think subsequently, especially as they've tried to bring back some pre-Crisis elements, things have gotten a bit muddled. I'm hopeful that that Rebirth will kind of smooth out some of these rough edges, and so the issues I've read so far have been really good. So I'm very optimistic about where DC's going. But anyway, I just wanted to say, really enjoyed the discussion. I think that's one of the great things about this podcast is getting the longtime fan and new fan perspective in it, and really enjoyed the episode, and just want to say thanks and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Matthew. We really appreciate the comments about episode 8, and we also hope that you enjoyed our discussion on X-Men Apocalypse. Feel free to send us some more feedback. It seems that you do have some history in comic books, and we would like to hear what you think of Apocalypse, the movie, and the character as well. Now, before we go, I have one more thing, which is a final message from Lee.
You've been listening to the Discussing Who podcast. Discussing Who is made by fans for fans. No copyright infringement is intended. Show us you're fans of the show by liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter. You can find us on the web at www.discussingwho.com. Want more Discussing Who? Find us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Player FM, the Doctor Who Podshock Alliance, and more. Send us your feedback to discussingwho@gmail.com, or if you'd like, simply record a voice message and send that to us via your smartphone, tablet, or computer. We want to hear from you.